remain on the streets. That's the message from Turkey's president to his supporters as the government continues to arrest those it says are responsible for the failed coup. But how will this impact Turkey's relations with its neighbours and other countries? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. In Doha, I'm Adrian Finnegan. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is vowing to purge the military of what he calls the virus responsible for Friday night's failed coup. Thousands of soldiers and judges have been arrested in a crackdown as the government reasserts its control. But what does an unstable Turkey mean for the region? And has the failed coup affected Ankara's relations with the West? Erdogan has blamed this man, Fethullah Gulen, of being behind the coup. Gulen is the Turkish leader of the so-called Gulenist movement and has been living in self-imposed exile in the US state of Pennsylvania. He's been described as one of the world's most important Muslim leaders and has millions of followers. His presence in the US could put a strain on relations between Washington and Ankara, and Turkey is calling for his extradition.
After this coup attempt, I again call on US President Barack Obama. I say, give this person in Pennsylvania to Turkey already. I say to the United States, if we are strategic partners, if we are model partners, please comply with your partner's request, because we have given you every terrorist that you wanted from us.
But Fethullah Gulen denies President Erdogan's accusations.
I need to know who the plotters are before I can say whether I know if they have played a role or not. Are they people who have certain feelings against certain other people? They might have sympathy, for example, with the main opposition party, the Nationalist Movement Party, because they have animosity towards others. These things we can't know. I've been here for 15 to 16 years, and I don't have the means to follow what is taking place over there.
So why is this failed coup so significant? Well, Turkey is seen as an important interlocutor with regional powers and is at the centre of the fight against ISIL and Europe's refugee crisis. It's also an important member of NATO with huge military power. Turkey has been an important ally of the US in challenging Russia and has also openly backed forces wanting to remove Syria's President Bashar al-Assad from power. The EU has had to rely on Turkey as it struggles to cope with the worst refugee crisis since the Second World War. It signed an agreement with the Turkish government last March that's helped to slow the number of refugees arriving in Europe. And Turkey acts as a buffer state in the fight against ISIL, but has been accused of failing to stop the flow of foreign fighters into Syria. Immediately after the failed coup on Friday, Turkey's government closed its operations at the Incirlik airbase, a critical hub for the US, its jets and drones targeting ISIL in Syria. Well, let's discuss all of this further with our guests. Joining us today from Ankara, we're joined by Yusuf Kandli, who's a Turkish journalist, the former editor of Hurriyet Daily News. And from Brussels, we're joined by Mark Pierini, a former EU ambassador to Turkey. Gentlemen, welcome. Yusuf, after accusations from Turkey, the US State Department issued a statement denying any links to the events of Friday night, saying, quote, public insinuations or claims about any role by the United States in the failed coup attempt are utterly false and harmful to our bilateral relations. Yusuf, what do you make of the US's response in general to Friday night and its aftermath?
It has a historical background. When in 1980 the generals took power in Ankara, the first report coming to Ankara from Washington was, our guys did it. That indeed cemented the perception here, the plot theories here, that whatever happens, whatever the Turkish military undertakes, it has a hand of the Pentagon in it. That's one perception. The other is, as you know, Fethullah Gulen, the religious leader of the Gulen movement, has been living in Pennsylvania for the past almost 2 decades, since 1998, indeed. That has been a trauma in Turkish-American relations for some time. The Turkish government has been asking for his extradition to Turkey, while the Americans are saying there is no official extradition request. Everything so far has been in verbal. Plus, to demand extradition of Gülen, Turkey must provide evidence showing that he was involved in any way in crime in Turkey.
So, Yusuf, should we give any credence at all to these accusations that are coming out of Turkey at the moment?
These accusations, I believe, are baseless. This is an obsession of the government that Gülen is involved in all these, and through Gülen, the Americans are involved in all this. I think this is an over-exaggeration.
Mark Pierini, do you agree with that? Turkey has declared that any state that stands by Gülen is an enemy. Comments like that are not going to help relations between Turkey and the US, are they?
No, and this is a standard nationalist populist narrative. As Yusuf just said, the US has a very precise extradition law, and despite all the rambling about the Gülen involvement and so on, what the US administration, the US judiciary needs is a solid file with proofs, and apparently there is not even a formal request. So that is essentially for domestic consumption.
Mark, you wrote yesterday that since the coup attempt, the West has voted Erdogan, and for very simple reasons. Would you care to elaborate on those reasons for us?
Yeah, well, the immediate reaction of the West, US and EU, is based on two things, and they are true to their normal standard policies. One is that elected institutions, elected governments should be respected, so a coup is not something that the West is going to approve. And it disapproved very quickly, in the middle of the night, and very strongly. The second thing is that following a coup, one expects a crackdown. And there is the point where you reach maybe a difference. As many of the Western political leaders have said since the night of the coup, the failed coup, is that the judicial process should follow according to rule of law, according to a due process. And that is now the main fear. We've seen already that not only close to 3,000 military have been arrested, but we also see close to 3,000 judges being arrested. What is the link between judges and the coup? We don't know yet.
Yeah, Yusuf, you wanted to make a point there?
Plus, Mark, don't forget that despite the law, two constitutional court judges are detained and arrested and officially charged with some involvement in all this, whereas the law says high court judges can only be judged at the high court. I mean, we are bypassing all the rules of law, even the established ones, and we are trying to take revenge of some sort, which is very worrisome.
But Yusuf, the judiciary, the accusation is that the judiciary has been infiltrated by Gulenists.
That might have been the case, but we should not forget that the judiciary that this government is complaining of, or the Gulenists that this government is complaining of, were the allies of yesterday. They know it better than I, which I as a journalist, I have always been in opposition. Therefore, I cannot know exactly to what extent they were Gulenists or to what extent the government is exaggerating. But the very fact is that these guys were together with the government yesterday in cracking down nationalists, Kemalist patriots in the country that were critical of the government's applications. Remember the 2007-2013 period, until these two groups started to clash in between themselves. I mean, I say these groups, the ruling party and the Gulenists.
Mark Pierini, France's President Francois Hollande says that he'd now expect a period of repression following the coup. From what you're saying, you think he's right. How will that affect, if he is right, Turkey's relations with its EU neighbours?
Well, the main worry lies in one simple statement made by the President of Turkey upon return to Istanbul. He said, and I'm not exactly quoting, but he said that this coup was a gift from God. It will help us cleanse the state of these people. So that is where the EU, the US as well, is expecting rule of law to apply. But of course, if you look at the evolution of the political game within Turkey in the past 3 years, let's say, you see that there is an increasing tendency to more authoritarianism. And therefore, as much as the coup has been condemned by Western leaders and European leaders very early on, there is this other worry that this coup will serve as a pretext to reinforce authoritarianism in Turkey.
Yusuf, is that how you see it? Is that going to happen?
Where is, Mark? Yes, unfortunately, that's what I said, and I would like to add one very important element to it. You know, this coup was averted not because the government's forces, the police and others, repelled those who were supporting the coup. On the contrary, the coup was averted thanks to the free media of this country, because the free media didn't obey the rules of the coupists. They rejected orders. They continued broadcasts. They tried to fulfill their basic duty of informing people, and they provided a platform to Erdogan and the government to call people to take to the streets. And thus, once people poured out the streets, the coup collapsed. Therefore, the coup collapsed thanks to the free media. And now, I am very much concerned that the element that helped to quell the coup might come under increased pressure. We are already under pressure in this country, and it appears from the vigilance of the crackdown, it appears that it will soon aim at media further.
Okay, I want to get back to Turkey's external relations, if I can. Mark, you talked about this comment that President Erdogan made, paraphrasing that the coup was a gift from God. What will Turkey's NATO allies make of a statement like that?
Well, essentially, it's worrying for two reasons. One is that it seems to comfort the trend that we've seen in Turkey since the presidential election of 2014 of reinforcing the presidential powers, and we all know about this project of a super executive presidency, which is not there yet, but being really pursued actively. The second thing is the religious reference. As we have seen during the night when the coup failed, we had two things at work. One, the president, in a kind of masterful move, went on FaceTime with a free media, by the way, belonging to a group that he had been fighting before, and addressed the nation through FaceTime. That was a masterful stunt, if I may say so, because the president was isolated in Marmaris and didn't have much else to do than addressing the nation in his usual way, asking people to support him. That's one thing. But in the following hour, the imams started calling the people to the street, saying by order of the president and the Diyanet being the religious authority of Turkey. This is a first in Turkey, when the political leadership is using the religious structure to conduct politics.
And that will concern...
this is new, and this is not something...
That will concern NATO's allies?
Oh, of course, yes, because we all rely in the West, in NATO, on secularist constitutions.
All right.
And Turkey formally does so as well.
Yusuf, just picking up on what you were saying a few moments ago, but let's look at it from an international standpoint. There have long been concerns in the West over Turkey's shift away from democracy to a more authoritarian style of leadership. Where do Friday's events leave those Western calls for democracy and rule of law?
You know, as a media member, I must underline, I am not for or against a certain politician. We are for democracy, freedoms, rights and liberties. And unfortunately on Friday night, what we saw all night from about 1:30 or so to until the morning, and even late until the noon that day, we had calls from the minarets for people to take to the streets. We had prayers on the, from the minarets, and we had, as Mark just said, statements being read out that it's the order of the president to go out and such. That's of course very worrisome, because first we want to believe that Turkey is still a secular democracy. Will that be upheld? I have doubts. I have doubts, particularly this scene of, I mean, we didn't see it in full, thank God, but the reported claim of a soldier beheaded at the Istanbul Bridge was very worrisome. Turkey had never ever had such scenes in the past. And such a country will have drastic consequences in its relations with the West if that path is continued. That's why I expect Turkey will have some sort of moderation once this trauma is over. Now we are still, it's very hot. And I understand the president and the ruling party, they are all carried away with the fact that how this happened. It's difficult to understand for them as well. But frankly, many people were in some way expecting such things to happen in Turkey in this manner, unfortunately.
Okay, well, let's talk about another aspect here that'll be of concern to Turkey's allies. Mark, France's foreign minister has said that questions must now be asked on whether Turkey is a viable partner in the fight against ISIL. What do you think the events of Friday night mean for the fight against ISIL?
Well, you have two considerations here. One is the immediate one, that for some 24 hours, the Incirlik Air Force Base was closed. It's now reopened, apparently, since the last hour or so. So operations against the Islamic State have started again. That might have been linked to the post-coup operations. The Turkish commander of the base has been arrested with several others. So that's perhaps something little and temporary. What is of concern to Minister Ero and many others in Europe and the US is Turkey's ambivalence for the past 2 years about ISIL. It's quite clear that the remaining stretch of the Syrian-Turkish border that remains occupied by ISIS on the southern side, is the only lifeline to ISIS for jihadists, for ammunition, and for oil coming out of the territory. So if the policy of the coalition is to smother ISIS, and ISIS is on the run, as we all know, well, it takes a decisive move by Turkey. And therefore, the questions that are going to be asked in the forthcoming meeting of the coalition is Turkey ready to fulfill the pledge? And that is, of course, a very strong expectation, all the more so that you've had these tragic events in France now, but in Belgium 3 months ago, 4 months ago almost. So this is clearly an expectation from the Western partners of Turkey.
Yusuf, given Turkey's, 600 kilometers long border with Syria and the fight against ISIL, can we expect, do you think now, a decisive move by Turkey against ISIL? And it's, as far as Turkey's relations with the coalition and the US, hang on. Who needs who more right now, Turkey or the US?
We all need both. I mean, just remember what happened at the Istanbul airport last week, or what happened in Turkey over the past 6 months. ISIL is not a threat only to the United States or to the Europeans. It's a threat to Turkey as well. But unfortunately, except an endorsement of a UN ban on ISIL, We couldn't yet declare ISIL a terrorist organization in Turkey officially. We have to take some moves, and perhaps Turkey's European allies and the Americans will have to force Turkey to take such legal moves and declare officially ISIL a terrorist organization. I mean, just approving a UN decision doesn't mean much, as we have seen. As regards who needs the other most, of course we need each other, but unfortunately the Americans need Turkey as well, because this border must be sealed. And for that, Turkey's cooperation is needed.
And Mark, I want to come back to Turkey's relations with the EU. Of course, we had the deal over refugees, the talk of visa-free travel for Turks outside Parliament after the attempted coup. Crowds chanted, "Bring back the death penalty," and the Prime Minister said, "Yeah, I heard your message, and that the necessary will be done." How will statements like that, or perhaps even the reintroduction of the death penalty, affect Turkey's EU aspirations?
Well, the political narrative about the death penalty, well, that's worrying, but it's only a narrative. If ever the death penalty is reintroduced, this is now going to be a major rift with the EU, because I will recall that when in December 2004 there was an agreement in the European Council to open accession negotiations with Turkey, that was on the basis of a number of reforms that Turkey had conducted. Number one of these reforms was the abolition of death penalty. So this issue has been coming back at times in the Turkish political narrative, but if it was ever done, that would be a rift of major importance, probably leading to the suspension of the accession negotiation. Not that I believe Ankara would care too much about the suspension of the accession negotiations, because in fact, if you look at the technical and political conditionality of these accession negotiations, they have now become a clear impediment to the policies followed by the Turkish leadership. If you look at public procurement, competition policy, or indeed a rule of law, freedom of expression, everything that is requested of Turkey, it goes against the grain.
I see Yusuf smiling there. Yusuf, I have a feeling this is going to be our last answer here. Just how much...
Death penalty would be just an addition
how
to
much,
the already existing problems, and I don't think...
How much damage have the events of Friday night done to Turkey's reputation globally and economically?
Coup itself is a very big important event, but put it aside, calling people to occupy Istanbul airport that night and allowing people, thousands of people, entering in the airport premises without controls, without any security check, resulted in, immediately, with the American Aviation Authority closing down, putting a ban on flights from Istanbul. That was incredible. But to come back to your real question, a coup in Ankara proved once again that the Turkish democracy is not at a level of the European democracies that we are aspiring to join in. We still have the illness of trying to solve our problem by using force. That's why indeed many people like myself, we are supportive of the government, we are supportive of the crackdown of the coup, but we expect the government to use this as an instrument, as an occasion to consolidate democracy. And if that is not done, then Turkey's image will be further strained, not only in the EU, but throughout the world as a third world country incapable of putting its house into order without violence.
Okay. And Yusuf, there, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it. Many thanks to you both, Yusuf Canley in Ankara and Mark Pierini in Brussels. And thank you for watching. Don't forget you can see the programme again anytime just by visiting aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, why not go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle at AJ Inside Story. From me, Adrian Finnegan, and the whole team here in Doha. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again. Bye for now.